Our establishment caters exclusively to celebrities. If you're not affluent, we kindly ask that you refrain from visiting. Please vacate the premises, the manager asserted with little emotion. The following day, I couldn't shake the lingering sense of prejudice toward appearances prevalent in five-star accommodations. Yet the manager remained oblivious. He failed to grasp the influence wielded by my in-laws and the discontent he would face in the days to come. I'm Maria, 32, a homemaker without children. Stephen, my husband, and I crossed paths during my part-time stint at a supermarket. His serene and refined demeanor convinced me of his inherent decency early in our courtship. However, my astonishment peaked during a visit to his parents' abode for wedding discussions. The residence resembled more of a sprawling campus than a home, complete with imposing gates and towering walls that concealed its entirety from view. Beyond the gate, an unexpected spectacle greeted me. At the far end of the lengthy stone pathway stood a breathtaking country estate, reminiscent of a lavish villa. A meticulously maintained garden sprawled beside the grand structure, suggesting the handiwork of a skilled gardener. My eyes widened further as I caught sight of what seemed to be a pristine swimming pool and tennis courts nestled beyond. A wave of disbelief washed over me as I questioned the purpose of my visit. Stephen's dual role as a college student and part-time convenience store worker was indeed remarkable. How he managed such a balancing act puzzled me. According to Stephen, his family tree boasted a lineage of corporate titans, his father, mother, sister, and himself all holding esteemed positions as presidents of top companies. Unlike some celebrities who inherit family enterprises, Stephen's family forged their own paths as accomplished entrepreneurs. Following suit, Stephen treated the same path, utilizing his part-time earnings to cover tuition costs and kickstarting his own entrepreneurial venture. It was through this unique circumstance that our paths crossed, and now he tirelessly endeavors to expand his fledgling business. In my family, my father holds a regular job at a company, my mother is a homemaker, and my brother follows suit with his own corporate career. Doubts crept in, making me ponder whether I could truly fit into Stephen's world as his wife. However, Stephen remained unperturbed. What drew me to you was your warmth and joy. You're the one I envisioned sharing my life with, he reassured me. I made the decision to place my trust in Stephen and stand by his side. Yet concerns loomed regarding my prospective in-laws. Would they view me, a commoner, as an adequate match for their son? Anxiety gnawed at my heart, fearing I might disappoint them. However, upon meeting Stephen's family, my apprehensions melted away. They embraced me with genuine warmth and hospitality, expressing delight that Stephen had finally brought a woman home. My father-in-law, in particular, seemed to take a liking to me. Maria, you possess a rare beauty, inside and out. Your upbringing shines through in your demeanor. Stephen's choice is impeccable, my mother-in-law praised. Both my mother-in-law and sister-in-law exuded warmth and kindness, and by the time our visit concluded, we had formed a genuine bond, evolving into good friends. Likewise, my own parents found solace in Stephen's gentle and composed nature, swiftly granting their blessing for our union. With their approval secured, our marriage proceeded seamlessly. As Stephen embarked on his entrepreneurial journey, he expressed his desire for me to leave my job and embrace the role of a full-time homemaker to support him. We settled into an apartment close to my in-laws' residence, relishing the early days of our marriage. Occasionally, we gather for dinner parties and barbecues at my in-laws, who, despite their hectic schedules, embrace Annie, our live-in nanny, as part of the family. Witnessing their genuine kindness left a lasting impression on me, reassuring me that I could be myself without feeling intimidated by their celebrity status. As 3 months elapsed since our nuptials, we decided to host a grand celebration for my father-in-law's 60th birthday. Wanting to reciprocate the care and hospitality shown to us during our wedding, Stephen and I took charge of arranging the festivities. With Stephen preoccupied with work, the responsibility fell on my shoulders, a decision we reached after discussing it together. Your father adores you, Maria, so you have the freedom to choose. I believe he'll be happy anywhere and with anything, Stephen assured me. Accepting that I had the liberty to make my own decisions proved to be the most challenging aspect. Seeking guidance, I confided in a friend who suggested opting for a top-tier hotel, especially since my father held such esteemed status. Following her advice, I discovered a luxurious 5-star hotel conveniently located near my parents' residence. Despite my lack of experience with upscale accommodations, I assumed it would meet the standards. Nevertheless, I resolved to visit and judge for myself. I opted to visit the hotel first, feeling a bit apprehensive about going alone. To ease my nerves, I invited my best friend from high school to join me. Upon making a reservation for lunch, I was immediately struck by the restaurant's impeccable and gracious service. Clear signs of a five-star establishment, I thought. Dressed in a smart and elegant ensemble, a white blouse paired with a sleek black skirt and pumps, I felt ready to step into the realm of luxury. My friend, too, looked lovely in her floral dress and stylish heeled boots. As we made our way to the hotel, excitement bubbled within me, akin to the anticipation of embarking on a thrilling journey. Little did I know, the experience awaiting us would exceed all expectations. I drove to the hotel in my trusty car, a faithful companion since my single days, and followed the directions to the parking lot situated at the roundabout near the entrance. The attendant who guided me was exceptionally courteous and helpful. However, as I stepped into the lobby, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. A sharply dressed man caught my attention. His stern gaze seemed to pierce through me. Though he bore the demeanor of a hotel staff member, neither my friend nor I recognized him. His impeccable suit and poised posture exuded an air of authority. I couldn't fathom why he was scrutinizing us so intently. Descending into the underground parking lot, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of self-consciousness as my modest car stood amidst the lineup of sleek black luxury vehicles. Observing some guests being chauffeured in with doors ceremoniously opened for them only added to my unease. Tempted to hail a cab, I hesitated, knowing it would only delay my arrival when I was already so close to home. As my friend and I entered the hotel, the individual who had been observing us approached. "You seem a bit out of place here. Can I be of assistance?" he asked, his tone polite yet carrying a hint of condescension that didn't sit well with me. "I have a lunch reservation here." "What do you mean by unsuitable for the hotel?" I questioned, feeling the surge of indignation. The taller man continued, his gaze directed down at me. "Your choice of vehicle and attire don't quite align with the usual clientele of this establishment," he remarked, punctuating his statement with a laugh. My cheeks flushed with embarrassment, appalled by his snobbish demeanor. Unable to meet his gaze, my friend averted her eyes. Despite feeling the sting of embarrassment, I refused to let it drive me away. Though typically reserved, I possess a resilient spirit, and I was determined to confront the individual responsible for these disparaging remarks. I needed to know who dared to speak about me in such a derogatory manner. "Are you a member of the hotel staff?" I inquired sharply, my eyes fixed on him. "I happen to be the manager of this establishment," came his haughty reply. Privately, I couldn't help but find his emphasis on the hotel's prestigious rating rather absurd, though I chose to keep this observation to myself. His response only served to aggravate me further. "Does this hotel judge its patrons based on their cars and appearance, adjusting its treatment accordingly?" I challenged, refusing to back down. The manager's disdainful sniff and snort in response only fueled my determination. "The clientele should align with the hotel's esteemed reputation. Maintaining that standard ensures guests feel comfortable and at ease," he asserted. His words grated on my nerves. "Are you implying that we're somehow tarnishing the reputation of your establishment?" I retorted, feeling my irritation mounting. The manager clicked his tongue disapprovingly. I couldn't help but feel sorry for my friend, who I had invited along. The thought of canceling our reservation and leaving crossed my mind. Just as I was considering our next move, an elderly hotel staff member approached me and politely inquired, "Ma'am?" Upon learning of my lunch reservation, he respectfully acknowledged the manager with a bow and said, "Allow me to escort you to the restaurant." With a sense of relief, I followed him to our destination, noticing the manager's lingering bitter glare. Unlike the manager's demeanor, the hotel employee who guided us was courteous and welcoming. "You've traveled quite a distance, and I apologize for any discomfort you may have experienced. We're renowned for our exquisite cuisine, and I trust you'll have a delightful stay," the young manager offered apologetically. I couldn't help but wonder how such a youthful figure found himself at the helm of such a prestigious establishment. He explained that the hotel's previous owner had retired, passing the reins to his younger brother, with his son assuming the role of manager. Despite his impressive academic background from a top-tier university, the manager lacked prior experience in hospitality and struggled to uphold the hotel's esteemed standards. It's disheartening to witness even long-standing patrons being overlooked and compelled to depart over minor matters, the elderly employee lamented solemnly. I've dedicated my life to this hotel, only to find myself deemed expendable in its quest for rejuvenation. I'll be bidding farewell at the month's end. It seems the hotel no longer values the loyalty of its devoted staff, instrumental in achieving its coveted 5-star status. As the elderly hotelier had assured, the cuisine surpassed all expectations, leaving my palate thoroughly satisfied. The head chef, who greeted us personally, exuded skill and experience, his age mirroring that of the hotelier. Yet a nagging concern lingered: would he too fall victim to the hotel's restructuring? People find joy in satiation, I remarked to my best friend as we exited the restaurant, our faces radiant with contentment. Just as we prepared to depart, the manager approached us once more. I eagerly anticipate your return to our restaurant, he remarked, his persistence unwavering. Though our decision to leave remained unchanged, the manager's resolve remained steadfast. I'm sorry, but individuals like yourself detract from the dignity of this establishment. This is a hotel frequented by celebrities, not suitable for those of lesser means. Kindly vacate the premises immediately, the manager declared bluntly, leaving me too stunned to protest. Though the hotel itself was undeniably elegant, the manager's rudeness and discourtesy left a sour taste in my mouth, prompting me to reconsider hosting my father-in-law's birthday celebration there. Surely, there must be a more hospitable venue nearby. When I recounted the incident to my in-laws, they listened intently. However, upon learning the name of the hotel, they exchanged puzzled glances. Why do we visit this hotel? I'm curious to experience such a renowned establishment, my father-in-law suggested. Much to my bewilderment, I couldn't comprehend his eagerness to return to a place where I had encountered such disrespect. Let's dress casually, my father-in-law proposed, urging everyone to do the same. He instructed us to proceed ahead while he would join us later. From the moment we stepped into the roundabout, the manager's piercing gaze never wavered. The lobby was bustling with activity. Guests lounged on plush sofas or sipped coffee, creating an atmosphere akin to a bustling event venue. As we settled onto a sofa beneath a grand chandelier, awaiting my father-in-law's arrival, the manager stormed in, his expression thunderous. You've returned, evidently without learning your lesson. You never seem to grasp it, do you? Arriving in a minivan, utterly disgraceful, he bellowed, his tone dripping with disdain. Undeterred by his haughty demeanor, I countered, we're here to celebrate my father-in-law's birthday. I made a reservation, and there was no mention of vehicle type. What's the issue? Unfazed, the manager continued his tirade. Your attire screams unsophisticated. You belong in one of those seedy roadside inns, he spat, his words drawing shocked glances from the other guests. This hotel should be open to everyone, shouldn't it? We're prepared to pay. It's absurd to judge guests based on arbitrary criteria. Treating guests this way is utterly appalling, I declared, garnering nods of agreement from those nearby. The customer should always come first, shouldn't they? Selecting guests based on appearance is simply unacceptable. The manager, visibly flustered, flushed red and retorted, we are a luxury establishment. We cater to celebrities. If you're not affluent, kindly depart. In that case, let's all head home, my father-in-law suggested. His words prompted many in the lobby to rise and depart, murmuring their discontent. I won't be returning, and I certainly won't recommend this place to anyone, they vowed as they attempted to leave, prompting a heated exchange with the rushing employees. In reality, the individuals in the lobby were all acquaintances of my father-in-law who had gathered at his behest. His slight delay was due to his efforts in rallying them together. My father-in-law had been a familiar face at the hotel since the days of its previous management. In the early years, he often dropped by in his work attire, yet he was captivated by the hotel's consistent dedication to treating every guest with the utmost respect. His company had a tradition of hosting extravagant parties at the venue annually, becoming deeply intertwined with its history. He introduced the hotel to his family, who also frequented its halls. Given their collective stature as company presidents, the frequency of these gatherings was notable. My mother-in-law utilized the hotel for client entertaining, while my sister-in-law conducted executive training sessions within its walls. Even my husband's company held celebratory events there, underscoring the significance of each family member's company to the hotel's success. Then, a voice broke the tension, begging for forgiveness. To our astonishment, it was none other than the hotel president, the manager's father, kneeling before us. The elderly hotelier, recognizing my father-in-law, had urgently contacted the president. With a profound apology, he chastised his son for his egregious behavior, compelling the manager to kneel alongside him in remorse. "I deeply regret the misunderstanding, sir. Had I known your esteemed position, the treatment would have been different. It was inappropriate to base service on financial status." The manager attempted to justify himself, but his excuses fell flat. "There's no need for apologies to me. It was my daughter-in-law who was mistreated by your manager, a woman as dear to me as my own daughter. Remember who the hotel truly serves. I have fond memories of your predecessor, but it's time to part ways," my father-in-law asserted firmly, signaling our departure from the five-star establishment. Leaving behind the pretentious atmosphere, we relocated to a beloved diner frequented by my family. With its cozy private rooms and welcoming ambience, the diner was the perfect setting to celebrate my father-in-law's milestone birthday. The delightful food and warm atmosphere brought joy to my in-laws, marking a memorable conclusion to the day. At my father-in-law's suggestion, we extended the celebration to include my parents, transforming the occasion into a lively and joyous affair. My husband and I gladly footed the bill for the party at the familiar diner. It was a modest expense for us, given the casual nature of the establishment. Once again, I reflected on our commitment to remain grounded, refusing to let wealth cloud our values or lead to misconceptions. As time passed, rumors circulated that the manager had been dismissed and demoted to the role of a cleaner. Although the specifics remained uncertain, it was clear that the hotel's reputation had suffered irreparable damage. 2 years later, the once illustrious establishment shuttered its doors for good, a cautionary tale of the consequences of arrogance and elitism. The next time I drove past the hotel, the sight was dismal. The glass windows shattered, furniture stacked haphazardly in front of the entrance, turning it into a desolate wasteland. The legacy of the hotel, once steeped in tradition, lay in ruins, all due to the actions of one misguided individual. Despite my father-in-law's humble upbringing, we share a strong bond, and I cherish the time spent with him, my husband, and the rest of my in-laws. As news of my pregnancy spreads, anticipation fills the air, with everyone eagerly awaiting the arrival of the newest addition to the family. 7 years ago, I got married to my husband. His sister already had kids back then. But right from the start, I felt like I wasn't really part of their family. My sister-in-law made it clear that I wasn't their aunt. She even told her kids that I wasn't their aunt. Because of this, I don't feel close to them like I do with my husband's other siblings' kids, who I treat like my own nieces and nephews. I love spending time with them and being a fun aunt. I've done things like painting their rooms and taking them on trips because I like being creative and making them happy. Even though I'm a mom now, I still love doing these things for my nieces and nephews because they're like my family, and I never really had one before. But when it comes to my sister-in-law's kids, I don't do any of that anymore. I've stopped trying to talk to them because my sister-in-law made it clear that she doesn't want me involved. I don't want to cause any drama or trouble by interacting with them since it seems like she doesn't want us to connect. Now, our kids feel jealous and left out because their cousins have cool stuff in their rooms and get to do fun things, while they don't. When my sister-in-law confronted me about it, she blamed me for making her kids feel that way. I told her it was her fault for creating a situation where I couldn't relate to her kids, and now they're the ones suffering because of it. I reminded her that she's reaping what she sowed, and her kids are the ones paying the price for it. Now she's all fired up, saying this and that. It's clear she's not happy, and honestly, I never wanted my kids to see her as their aunt anyway. The rest of the family just shakes their heads at her antics, but I know this tension isn't helping anyone. I do feel bad for her kids though. I can't help but wonder if I've made things worse. She doesn't see me as family to her kids because we're not related by blood or adoption. I don't think I'm in the wrong here, and it's frustrating to see the family dismiss her behavior. If anyone confronted me about it, I'd explain that I've always respected her role as a parent, even when she asked me to step back from being an aunt years ago. It hurt, but I understood and never crossed any boundaries. It's unfortunate that things turned out this way, but I had to respect her wishes. I didn't set these boundaries, I just followed them. When she complained to OP could have responded, "Do I know you?" But I wonder if the sister-in-law was the only daughter among the siblings. Maybe Penelope being the first woman to marry into the family triggered her. Over time, as the other brothers got married and had kids, she became less aggressive, but the damage was done. The only reason the sister-in-law regrets it now is because Opie turned out to be a fantastic aunt to other children, and the sister-in-law's plan backfired. Actions have consequences. Ope, you followed her instructions not to get involved. It seems like the rest of the family knows she's difficult too. Everyone here seems to have their faults. You probably aren't telling the whole story about what's going on between you and your sister-in-law. But it's not fair for either of you to involve the kids. And what about your husband? Does he also ignore his niece and nephew? Why is he supporting either of you acting this way? I couldn't disagree more. The sister-in-law made the choice to exclude OP and is now causing conflict because OP respected the boundary she set around her kids. Are you suggesting OP should have ignored that boundary? I understand your concern for her kids. Sadly, they suffer because of their mom's actions. But before you try to change anything, consider how your sister-in-law will react. She might turn any contact into something negative. Keep that in mind as you decide what to do next. This situation happened 2 months ago, but he's still upset about it. I'm a 45-year-old woman. I love my oldest son, but he's almost an adult and acts like one. In our family, everyone takes turns doing chores like cooking, washing dishes, and cleaning common areas on different days. Unfortunately, my son dislikes chores and always tries to avoid them. It's been an ongoing struggle. Washing dishes is particularly troublesome. He fills the dishwasher too much, preventing the detergent from reaching the dishes, leading to them not getting clean. I interrupted him quickly and reminded him that the dishwasher sanitizes dishes. My husband supported me, saying, if he wants dinner, he'll eat from his dishes. He often promised to wash some, but I refused, reminding him that he had the chance to clean them properly the night before. I told him to eat from them as they were or skip dinner. He yelled and threatened to make his own food, but I stood firm. Eventually he gave in, reluctantly selecting the least dirty dishes and eating quietly. I felt bad seeing him so disgusted, but I was tired of the wasted time, water, and detergent. It turned out well. His dishes came out perfectly clean afterward. However, he's still angry, and I do feel guilty now. But I'm tired of his deliberate laziness causing problems for everyone else in the house. Am I wrong? You're not wrong, and I think you handled the situation well. However, I disagree with your statement that he doesn't realize his laziness screws over everyone else in the house. He knows, he just doesn't care. He's old enough to understand the consequences of his actions, and it's time he learns. This should have been addressed sooner. If he doesn't face consequences, he won't change his behavior. Instead, he learned that even when I make a mistake, my parents will have to fix it because they need to eat too. What OP did was smart because he's almost an adult, and it's time to learn how to do things properly. The fact that he suddenly knew how to do the dishes correctly overnight shows that he was capable all along but chose not to do them properly. Well done, OP. I grew up in poverty but worked harder than anyone else to achieve success in my personal, financial, and professional life. My family often had to choose between bus fare and a meal. So when I became financially successful, many people approached me for help. I helped them out of compassion and understanding, knowing how much a small gesture can mean to someone in need. However, many of those I helped started to see me as their personal ATM. I never faced this issue with people who were already financially stable. They would have been embarrassed to ask. While I don't spoil my kids, we do live comfortably in a nice house in a good neighborhood, and I expect them to work hard and excel in school. My eldest son, a teenager, got into trouble for telling a peer that he didn't want to be friends because of his financial situation. A teacher overheard and reacted strongly. Unlike that teacher, I took the time to understand the context and facts before responding. My son then began spending time with Austin. Austin would often lament about not having money to participate in activities, so my son would sometimes cover for him. Like when they went to see Top Gun and Austin couldn't afford a ticket, my son paid for him. However, things got uncomfortable when Austin began to expect my son to foot the bill regularly. The tipping point came when they went to FIL with friends, and Austin assumed my son would pay for his meal too. While my son only ordered onion rings, Austin indulged in a full meal, dessert, and milkshake. Later, my son vented to their friends about how little money he receives from me, and yet he still has to work as a tutor, only for Austin to take advantage of his generosity. Consequently, their friends distanced themselves from Austin. A few weeks later, in class, Austin wondered why he wasn't being invited to hang out anymore. My son replied, "Because he's tired of covering for him." Austin responded, "But I'm poor." My son sarcastically remarked, "Oh, so you're too poor to be friends with? Maybe I should quit school and get a job like him." This exchange prompted a call from the teacher. I clarified the context of the conversation to the teacher, as she wasn't receptive when my son tried to explain it. She labeled my son as mean and threatened detention. I informed her that I would advise my son not to serve detention for this incident and asked her what she planned to do about it. She ultimately dropped the matter. Edit. It's important to note that Austin isn't in extreme poverty. He has access to resources like last year's iPhone. He has the ability to work like other kids at their school, but chooses not to. You're not in the wrong here. Consider discussing with the head teacher the emotional toll on your son, who has been coerced into giving money repeatedly, and how the last incident bordered on theft. Your son deserves support in standing up to emotional manipulation and bullying, and he has the right to end the friendship. The teacher should have heard the whole story before jumping to conclusions. Everyone involved made mistakes here. While your son's outburst might warrant detention, it's not ideal for you to interfere with a teacher's disciplinary actions unless there's a significant issue with her approach. It might be beneficial to help your son improve how he expresses himself to avoid more serious consequences in the future. I agree, your son has the right to stand up for himself. But the way he expressed it could have been kinder. A more effective approach would have been to say something like, "I don't want to be friends with someone who takes advantage of me," which addresses the real issue without targeting Austin's financial situation. Being overly confrontational with someone who feels entitled might lead to further trouble. Given the circumstances, your son's response wasn't entirely unreasonable. It was a sarcastic retort to someone making excuses for their behavior. The teacher's refusal to listen to the full story and her decision to focus on a poorly worded phrase taken out of context didn't help the situation. I know it might sound odd, but I don't think I'm in the wrong here. I just need some other perspectives on this. My brother, who dropped out of high school, recently got married to his wife, who has similar qualifications, at the young age of 19. I'm 23, just to give some context. The situation is complicated, but basically my brother's mother-in-law pushed them into getting married because she wanted a grandchild as soon as possible. Unfortunately, my own mother went along with it, which I find frustrating. Now my new sister-in-law is expecting, which confirms my suspicions. I know I might seem disrespectful, but I'm not happy about it. We're not well off financially. My dad, who used to be assertive, didn't step in to prevent this situation. Ironically, he persuaded me against attending the college I wanted because of the high tuition fees. To cover the wedding costs, my dad borrowed money from my uncle, his brother, and now he's pressuring me to repay it because my brother and sister-in-law, being young and expecting, can't afford to. They told me they're in too much debt to get a loan from a bank, so it falls on me since I'm debt-free with savings and a job. When they brought this up, I didn't say anything. I just laughed and left. Now they're bombarding me with calls and texts asking for financial help, but I refuse to budge. It feels like we're living in completely different realities. It's not about culture or anything like that. Am I wrong for refusing to take out a loan for my family? Definitely not. Goodness, what a chaotic situation. If no one can afford to cover the wedding costs, what about the baby? It seems like they'll keep turning to you for loans they won't repay. Stand your ground. This isn't your problem to fix, so don't entertain further discussions about it. If they can't afford a lavish wedding without a substantial loan, maybe they should prioritize their resources for the baby instead. Laughing in their faces was a fitting response to such a ridiculous request. Oh, please ensure that you're the only one with access to your savings. Secure your accounts with updated passwords and avoid staying logged into online banking on shared devices. It's important to take these precautions, especially if your parents have access to personal information like your social security number and employment history. While you might believe they wouldn't take advantage of you, financial strain can drive people to make unexpected decisions. That's right. If they have your social security number, they could potentially open credit in your name, leaving you in a difficult situation. It's a quick process, but you can easily lock your credit by contacting the major reporting agencies, usually 3 of them, either by phone or online. Reversing a lock is simple when you're ready to apply for loans for things like a home, education, or a car. Their financial irresponsibility shouldn't fall on your shoulders. They need to figure out a repayment plan for your uncle on their own. Growing up, I lived with my best friend and his wife, Amanda, on I-35. While Amanda has always been a friend, I've had a closer relationship with her husband. Unfortunately, they moved out of town years ago, only returning for significant family events like funerals or weddings. A few months back, Amanda visited for her sister-in-law's bachelorette party, despite feeling uneasy about it due to her sister-in-law's mistreatment stemming from jealousy or other issues. Wanting to ease her nerves, I offered to pick her up from the airport and take her out for drinks afterward. However, I made a mistake and forgot to add it to my calendar. I had already planned a date for that night and couldn't cancel it, so I arranged for the sister-in-law's best friend to pick up Amanda and take her to the hotel. 2 days later, I met up with Amanda for drinks. She was feeling really down after her mistreatment at the bachelorette party, where everyone else seemed to ignore her. We spent a few hours chatting and drinking, and then I received a text from my girlfriend, asking me to come over to her apartment. I arranged for a mutual friend to join Amanda at the bar and keep her company before leaving. After that night, Amanda stopped communicating with me. She ignored my texts and social media messages for 3 months. Finally, I decided to ask my best friend about what was going on with his wife. He listed a series of complaints Amanda had against me, including forgetting her birthday multiple times despite Facebook reminders, which she doesn't use, and the incident at the bar where I forgot to pick her up from the airport and left her alone. I explained to my friend that I tend to be absent-minded, and they should have been aware of that by now. I also mentioned that Amanda is overly sensitive and holds onto grudges. I reminded him that I had already apologized to her for everything, so I didn't understand why she was still upset. However, my best friend became angry and is now not speaking to me either. Do you think I'm the one in the wrong here? My parents are living in this house, so you need to go back to your parents' place, my husband said suddenly. I was taken aback by his words. He seemed to think he was making perfect sense. What now? You got complaints? Don't argue with what I'm saying. I'm totally okay with divorcing you, he asserted. Lately, he'd been cold to me, and I had my own grievances. I had been considering divorce as well, but I didn't think being kicked out of the house was fair. I mean, I'm the one paying the $1,800 for the living expenses. I wondered if he even remembered that. As I stared at him in disbelief, he lost his patience and snapped, "Get out of this house already. If you're here, my parents won't feel comfortable coming." I truly didn't understand why I had to leave, but I said, "All right, I'll take everything I bought with me." Once I agreed, my husband, contented, said, "Get on with it then," and left. I immediately called a resale shop. My name is Emily. I currently live with my husband, Robert, who's 5 years my senior. We met when mutual friends introduced us, and we unexpectedly bumped into each other while hanging out with them. This led to us spending a day off together. I'm actually thinking of becoming a voice actor. I'm studying for it now, Robert said. Listening to Robert, I thought his deep voice was indeed impressive. I've always had a soft spot for soothing voices and felt drawn to his. He probably sensed my interests. Soon, we exchanged contact information and suggested hanging out alone. Before we knew it, we started dating. Neither of us explicitly said we should date, but we found ourselves in a relationship. Being young at the time, I thought this must be what adult romance feels like. I had just graduated from college and started working, so maybe I was taken by the idea of dating someone who seemed so mature compared to me. Seeing this, my best friend Ashley expressed concern. "Are you sure about dating someone 5 years older?" I confidently replied, "It's fine. Age gap relationships aren't that uncommon nowadays. I really like Robert and he feels the same about me. There's nothing to worry about." Seeing my conviction, even Ashley, who was initially concerned, said, "Well, if you say so, Emily." Robert and I continued dating for about 3 years, and he eventually brought up marriage. I had mentioned him to my parents, and although they knew he was 5 years older, they were eager to meet him. Given this pressure, I often found myself wondering when he would propose. He proposed to me during one of his usual visits to my apartment, where we just hang out and relax. Normally, I'd expect a proposal to happen in a more romantic setting, but this casual approach felt very much like Robert. I didn't mind it. In response to Robert's proposal, I said, "Sure, let's get married." Perhaps we were both a bit nonchalant about it. After that, we went to visit each other's parents, but to be honest, I didn't really get along with Robert's folks. When we arrived at Robert's family home, the entryway and living room were crammed with what looked like antiques, though I couldn't tell where they were from. From what I could see, they all seemed to be replicas or imitation pieces. As we were ushered into the living room and met Robert's parents, both were dressed in high-end branded clothing and decked out in gaudy jewelry as they greeted me. It felt like I was meeting a stereotypical nouveau rich couple. No matter how I looked at it, our tastes and values seemed too different for us to get along. Robert's mother even remarked, "You look so average, don't you?" comparing her appearance to mine, which was quite rude. I was taken aback that the parents of the man I was thinking of marrying could be like this. But in the end, it's Robert and I who are getting married. If I don't get along with my future in-laws, then I don't really have to interact with them much. So, I decided not to let it bother me too much. After Robert and I got married and moved into our condo to start our life together, Robert came to me looking a bit anxious. "Hey, who was that woman in the blue dress among your guests at the wedding?" "Which woman in a blue dress?" There were several of my guests who wore blue dresses, so just based on that information, I couldn't figure out who he was talking about. "You know, the one who gave a speech as your best friend." "Do you mean Ashley?" "Yes, she was wearing a blue dress." Upon hearing this, Robert muttered, "So it was Ashley." "What's wrong with Ashley?" I asked, noticing he seemed visibly flustered. "Oh, it's nothing major. The other day when I was headed to work, I thought I saw someone who looked like her. That's when I remembered she had given a speech as your best friend at the wedding." I was puzzled at his sudden interest in Ashley and why he was so flustered, but he just chuckled and said, "It's nothing really," and retreated to his room before I could ask anything further. A little while later, I got a call from my best friend Ashley with some news. "Listen, Emily, my boyfriend's coming back to the US next year." Ashley had been dating her boyfriend since high school. They'd known each other since elementary school, but he had moved away middle school. Since then, they had been writing letters to each other. By the time they got to high school, they were reunited, and that's when he confessed to her. I always felt content listening to Ashley's bittersweet love stories. I always enjoyed hearing about her love adventures. Her boyfriend, after working for a few years at his company, got transferred to an international branch and had been away from the US for some time. Despite the distance, their communication never faltered, and they remained a close-knit couple. "Do you think he might propose once he's back, and then you guys will get married?" "Oh, Emily, you're always so quick to jump to conclusions. Just make sure to invite me to the wedding. I promise I'll give a heartwarming speech." "Of course, after that touching speech you gave at your wedding, I'll definitely need you to do the same for mine. Don't set the bar too high." We shared a laugh over our tea. We could talk about anything and everything, completely trusting one another. If one of us had a problem, the other would be there, always ready to offer a shoulder to lean on. It was around this time that I started noticing Robert coming home later and later. "Working late again today?" Yeah, you think I shouldn't work or something?" Even after getting married, Robert held on to his dream of becoming a voice actor. While studying for that career, he couldn't quite see the results and had to work part-time jobs to make ends meet. Yet all the money Robert made from his part-time jobs went straight to his voice acting classes, so I had to cover all our living expenses. That's why we couldn't really save up a shared savings. After a while of being married, I realized Robert wasn't willing to give up on his dream for the sake of our family. I kept wondering if part-timers really had to work so much overtime. Robert's daily late nights added to my worries. "Hey, haven't you been working too much lately? They shouldn't be making you do so much overtime, even if it's just a part-time job." "I told you, I'm fine. More money is always better. Just keep your opinions to yourself." By that time, Robert had stopped calling me by my name and just referred to me as you. When we got married, I genuinely believed he would speak to me more gently and frequently, but after our marriage, I ended up hearing harsh words from him most of the time. The once gentle and deep voice of Robert had turned solely into a harsh one. He seemed to be drinking a lot, and sometimes his voice became raspy. Voice acting depends heavily on a healthy throat, so it worried me that Robert, who wanted to be a voice actor, wasn't taking care of his. But even that seemed to bother him. Slowly, he began to avoid talking to me, and eventually, he would ignore me even when we crossed paths at home. That's when I got a call from Ashley. She said she had something to discuss, so I suggested we meet up since I had my own concerns. We decided to chat in a karaoke booth so that no one could overhear us. Ashley seemed very cautious and had specifically reserved a room where she could see the counter and staff from the door. You specifically chose this room? Yes, I wanted a spot where the staff could see if there was a suspicious person outside our door. A suspicious person? Is that related to what you wanted to discuss? At my words, Ashley nodded. She had felt like someone was following her ever since she left her job about a month ago. Now she even felt followed on her days off. The reason Ashley had chosen a room where the staff could easily see was that she thought the person stalking her might try to eavesdrop on our conversation. Did you talk to the police about it? I tried, but since there's no actual contact, they can't do much. What about your boyfriend? He's coming back in a month. I thought I'd discuss it with him too, but I wanted to talk to you first. Someone close by. I see. Ashley hadn't gotten a good look at her stalker because she was too scared, so she didn't know if it was a man or a woman. So I decided to stand at a distance and identify the person who was stalking Ashley, and through that, I came to understand who it was. Although I couldn't discuss my rocky relationship with Robert in retrospect, maybe it was for the best, because the one following my best friend Ashley was none other than my husband Robert. He would tell me he had to work overtime daily, but after finishing his shift, he would lurk near Ashley's workplace and tail her when she left. I couldn't believe that the person scaring Ashley was someone so close to me. When I found out, I was beside myself. The look on Robert's face when he was following Ashley was downright creepy. He had this sleazy, unsettling grin. I fell in love and married this man. The instant I saw his face, the love that had lasted for years went cold. I told Ashley the truth and advised her to move immediately. With the help of her coworkers, she managed to have someone drive her close to her new place from the underground company parking lot for a while. After Ashley and I took these measures, Robert became increasingly frustrated, and one day, that frustration exploded. My parents are going to live here, so you should go back to your parents' house, Robert declared suddenly. I was taken aback by his words, yet Robert seemed convinced he was making perfect sense. Got a problem with that, he continued. If you oppose what I'm saying, I'm fine with divorcing you. While I had many grievances with him and even thought that divorce might not be so bad, I did think he could just kick me out of our home. I'm the one paying $1,800 for our monthly expenses. I wonder if Robert even remembers that, I said skeptically. He lost his temper. Just get out already. My parents can't move in if you're still here. Why do I have to leave? I don't get it at all, I replied, but eventually said, fine, I'll take everything I bought with me. Seeing my agreement, Robert said, just hurry up, and walked away. I immediately contacted a local buyback service. The next day, they came to our apartment. At first, Robert smirked, thinking I was moving out. However, when he saw the workers assessing all the furniture and appliances, his eyes widened in shock. After they had finished evaluating everything except what was in Robert's room, a staff member handed me a quote saying, the total value is $22,000. I promptly signed, saying, all right, sell it all. Robert, coming back to his senses, grabbed my arm with concern. Why are you selling everything? My parents are going to live here. How can they with no furniture? I shook off his grip. What are you talking about? When we got married, you said you were broke because you were paying for your acting classes. You begged me to handle the rent, furniture, and living expenses. I never imagined you were that broke. I felt deceived. Remember the $1,800 monthly expenses I've been covering. From now on, you'll pay that. And with your parents moving in, I bet it'll be even more, I declared. Robert went pale, but he quickly tried to regain his composure. Thought you could talk about money and I'd cancel the divorce? Who do you think you are? I've already gotten close to a rich lady, he continued. And then I remembered Robert following Ashley recently, if what he considers close was his stalker behavior. Then Robert seriously diluted. Ashley definitely comes from a wealthy family. Her grandfather was a businessman, and now her father has taken over. Ashley truly is the perfect heiress, but she doesn't flaunt it. She spends just like me and our friends, and no one judges her based on her family's wealth. However, Robert seemed to have learned about my best friend Ashley's wealthy background and decided she'd be a better match. Could he possibly think that if two people are the same age, the wealthier one is better? That infuriates me, but Ashley would never marry Robert. Ashley's boyfriend, whom she's been dating since high school, is coming back to the States soon. They'll likely get married, she mentioned, feeling really creeped out because someone was stalking her every day. I remarked upon hearing he wasn't close with Ashley and that she found him creepy. Robert was floored. I always escorted Ashley home, he insisted. You're lucky you weren't reported to the cops, I shot back, but I didn't know about any boyfriend. He's been abroad. She chose me over some unknown guy. They've been pen pals since elementary school and apparently talk almost daily. And unlike you, who's only been working part-time jobs, her boyfriend is a successful man recognized even by her father. Robert looked utterly defeated as I spoke. When the buyback workers had taken all the furniture and appliances, he seemed to recover somewhat. If you are all I have, you'll support my dream of becoming a voice actor forever, right? He asked, striking a pose. I gave him a cold look and said, Excuse me, I've already been to the divorce lawyer's office and started the process. Let's communicate through our attorneys from now on. Robert, perhaps thinking I still had feelings for him, clung to my waist. Don't say things like that. How have we been getting along all this time? Getting along? When? Ever since you found out my best friend Ashley is a wealthy heiress, you've been cold to me and started hanging around her. Right after I married you. I realized it was a mistake. Robert started crying like a child, even though he's 5 years older than me. Seeing him cry like that only made my already dwindling affection for him drop even further. At this point, I couldn't stand being in the same room with him. Just cut it out. Oh, by the way, I told your uncle who's letting us rent this apartment about our divorce. My uncle? You know he's strict, right? Well, I've been paying all the rent and living expenses until now. So when I told him you might not be able to afford it if I leave, he said he'd make you work for him. That means I won't be able to continue my voice acting studies. You hardly ever practice anyways. Maybe it's time to face reality. Anyway, if you come near Ashley again, I'll report you to the police immediately. Goodbye. I left the house, determined to never look back. I plan to return to my parents' house for now, but I'm thinking of moving closer to my job if I find a good place. As for Robert, it seems his uncle kept his word and made Robert work at his company. Soon after, Robert's parents, who had been planning to leech off their son after he married the wealthy heiress, also moved into the apartment. They too were taken to work at the uncle's company. Seems like the whole family had a habit of taking advantage of others. I'm just glad I was able to get away from such a toxic family. Age difference doesn't really matter, but I think I need to choose my next partner more carefully. On another note, after things with Robert settled, I received a wedding invitation from Ashley herself. She introduced me to her longtime boyfriend, and I truly wish them all the best. My first marriage didn't work out, but I hope Ashley's marriage will last for many years to come. My name is Olivia, and I'm a 32-year-old housewife. My husband, Liam, is 34 and works an ordinary office job. We've been married for 8 years and have a precious daughter named Ava, who is 6 years old. Ava is incredibly adorable, and both Liam and I are completely smitten with her. I have an older sister, Emma, who is 3 years older than me. She recently turned 35 and went through a divorce due to a personality clash, becoming a single mother to her 4-year-old son, Noah. One day, we planned to go to the zoo with Emma and Noah. Unfortunately, I caught a cold at the wrong time. When I tried to cancel the outing, Liam kindly offered to take the day off from work, not wanting to disappoint the kids. Even though it meant he and Emma would be alone together with the children, I didn't think anything of it. However, one day when I was walking through the shopping district after running errands, I happened to see Liam and Emma sitting together in a cafe. I wondered why they were together, but as it was almost time for Ava to come home from her after-school program, I headed home, still feeling uneasy. That night, when Liam came home, I asked him about it. He explained that it had started raining and they happened to meet, so they went to the cafe to wait for the rain to stop. He seemed calm and nonchalant, so I trusted him at the time. But after that day, Liam started coming home late more frequently. He also began asking for more money, claiming he was short on cash. On his days off, he went out more often, and whenever Emma visited our house, their interaction seemed more familiar than before. Suspicion began to creep into my mind, even though our relationship with Ava remained as strong as ever. Then an incident occurred that made me realize something was amiss. Emma came over as usual and asked if I could take care of Noah for about a week. A friend had invited her on a trip to Hawaii, and it was difficult to bring Noah along. Emma pleaded, saying she needed a break after being so busy. I understood how hard it was for her since the divorce, and though reluctant, I agreed to help. As Emma's trip approached, Liam told me he would be away for a while on a business trip, visiting multiple areas over several days. I thought it was a tough coincidence, but I was shocked when I learned his departure date. It was the same day as Emma's trip to Hawaii. Was this really a coincidence? Liam's increasing phone use and secretive behavior made me more suspicious. When Emma visited, their interaction seemed unusually close. On the day of Emma's departure, she arrived early in the morning with Noah. The moment I held Noah's hand and immediately noticed something was off. His hand was unusually hot and his body felt feverish when I lifted him. I didn't need a thermometer to know he had a high fever. "Emma, doesn't Noah have a fever?" I asked. Yes, he's been running a fever since yesterday. It hasn't gone down yet," she admitted. "What? We have to take him to the hospital right away. Surely your son's health should be more important than a trip," I insisted. But then Emma said something outrageous. "So I'm counting on you." "What? You're leaving your child here while he has a fever?" I was incredulous. "I have no choice, do I? I made the promise a long time ago. It's ridiculous to pay a cancellation fee," she replied. "That's not the point, is it? Isn't Noah the most important here?" I argued. "Of course he's important, but I'm not worried because you're here, Olivia. Take good care of him for me," Emma said. "Wait, Emma." Despite my attempts to stop her, Emma left. I couldn't believe it. Noah was suffering from a high fever, and she left him in my care. Noah seemed to be really struggling, probably because of the strain of moving while having a high fever. I quickly laid him down on the bed and placed a cold, wet towel on his forehead. While I was preparing an ice pillow in the freezer, Liam woke up. "Liam, it seems Noah has a fever," I said. "Really? Is that so?" he replied sleepily. "Emma is terrible. She's going on a trip, leaving Noah in this state," I fumed. "Well, she had planned it long ago, right? She probably can't cancel at this point," he reasoned. "You too, Liam. Poor Noah. If you feel that way, you should take good care of him," I said. "Liam, can't you do something about your business trip? If Noah has some contagious disease, he might pass it to Ava. I'll take care of Noah, so I want you to take care of Ava," I pleaded. As a mother who loves her daughter dearly, I reluctantly agreed. Work is important, but surely our daughter is even more important. However, my expectations were betrayed. "What? That's impossible. You should know that," I exclaimed. "If you're worried, just leave her at your parents' house," Liam suggested. "Even if you say that, my parents are busy with work and your parents' house is too far away to go now," I countered. "Then there's no choice," Liam replied. "Well, all we need to do is let Noah sleep. It'll be fine," he said casually. "Say that so casually. What do you want me to do then?" I retorted. It's time. I have to go. I'll be going then." Liam hurried off, leaving me behind. I quickly called my parents. They couldn't take a day off work on such short notice, but my mother promised to leave early and come pick up Ava as soon as possible, which gave me some relief. While waiting for my mother to arrive, I kept Ava confined to her room, feeling sorry for her. Meanwhile, Noah's condition seemed to be worsening. In addition to this fever, he started to cough in the early afternoon. When my mother arrived early from work, I immediately took Noah to the pediatrician. On the way to the hospital, my heart ached seeing Noah suffer even from the car ride. The doctor diagnosed it as a common cold and prescribed an antipyretic, advising me to monitor his condition closely. However, I was warned to call an ambulance without hesitation if his fever rose further or if he became dangerously delirious. "I'm sorry, Mom," I whispered to myself, overwhelmed with concern for Noah's well-being. "I suddenly had to ask you to take care of Ava. Don't worry about it. More importantly, I'm worried about Noah," my mother assured me over the phone. Noah was as dear to my parents as Ava. After finishing the call with my mother, I felt an urge to call my husband's company. I needed to know the location of his supposed business trip in case of emergencies. The response confirmed my worst fears. He was on paid leave. Looking up at the sky, a bad premonition began to feel real. I opened my husband's laptop, which I had never seen before, and examined his search history. The destination was Hawaii, and all arrangements, plane tickets and hotel reservations had been made by him. I recognized the name of the hotel. It was where my sister had mentioned staying. My sister and husband in Hawaii at the same hotel at the same time. Such a coincidence was implausible, not even 1 in 10,000. The fact that my husband, who claimed to be on a business trip, was on paid leave in Hawaii was abnormal. Out of curiosity, I checked my sister's social media. There were no new posts, but her recent ones showed her often with someone. The clothing visible in the photos looked all too familiar. What turned my suspicion into certainty was a picture where the person with her wore a watch that I had given my husband, not expensive, but distinct in design. This person, clearly not my husband, appeared in multiple photos with her, wearing the same clothes and watch. The possibility of coincidence was virtually zero. Then I found the conclusive photo in an album labeled Window Shopping. My sister was reflected in a shop window, and at the edge of the photo, unmistakably, was my husband. My sister, elated, had likely posted the photo without realizing he was in the reflection. With trembling hands, I saved all the photos. There was no doubt now. My sister and husband were having an affair. They were together right now, and it felt like everything fell into place. The foundation I had built with my husband was crumbling all at once. I called them repeatedly, but each time an automated voice message played, it seemed they had turned off their phones. Noah's fever still hadn't subsided, and seeing his pained expression, anger began to well up inside me. Despite a young child suffering so much, despite my own tough situation, at this very moment, my sister and husband were likely laughing and enjoying their trip to Hawaii. Could there be a more cruel story than this? Shaking with anger, I tried to think about what to do next, but that would have to wait. First and foremost, I needed to wait for Noah to recover. Yet there was no sign of his fever decreasing. If anything, it seemed to be getting worse. I was shocked when I took his temperature minus 107 degrees. Children are susceptible to high fevers. Ava had once had a fever of 104 degrees, but never this high. Why wasn't the fever reducer working? Noah was completely exhausted, and any movement seemed to cause him pain. Desperate to suppress the panic threatening to overwhelm me, I was just considering calling an ambulance when my smartphone buzzed. "Mommy," Noah murmured weakly, his face contorted in pain, calling out for his mother. "I can't forgive them. I'll never forgive them," I vowed silently, my vision clouding with rage. Just as it seemed my anger would consume me, Noah's condition suddenly took a turn for the worse. A week had passed since then, and despite my sorrow, today was a clear day. I found myself staring blankly at the wide blue sky, tears streaming down my face. I had lost count of how many times I had cried, yet my tears showed no signs of drying up. Ava's hand trembled in mine, and as I lifted her up, I could see my parents also in tears, comforting her. Other family members and friends gathered, all sharing in our grief. Everyone, without exception, was in tears. Suddenly, my smartphone vibrated. I set Ava down and glanced at the display. It was my sister's name. "Hello," I answered hesitantly. "Oh, Olivia, it's been a while. I just got back from Hawaii. I'm at the airport now, and I'm going to pick up Noah next. Thanks for looking after him." My sister's voice came through the line as if from another world. I uttered a phrase as if whispering, "Our dear has gone to heaven." A single tear, which I thought I had under control, spilled over. Unable to comprehend my words, my sister asked back in a bewildered voice over the phone, "Heaven? What are you talking about? That makes no sense." "So our loved one is in heaven while you were enjoying your trip to Hawaii," I said, struggling to contain my emotions. "I don't understand what you're saying," my sister replied, sounding confused. "You'll understand when you get here. The funeral is over, and we're now at the crematorium." "What? The crematorium?" My sister's voice was filled with shock and disbelief, and the phone call abruptly ended. "No, no." My sister rushed out of the taxi, desperation etched on her face. She called out his name and looked around frantically, but Noah wasn't there. "Where is he?" "He's not here." "Of course he isn't," I said softly, pointing in the direction of the crematorium. Though modern crematoriums don't emit smoke like the old ones, there was no mistaking the solemn reality. Someone was being cremated right now. "About Noah. The day you dropped him off, his fever suddenly spiked to 107 degrees Fahrenheit. 107 degrees? My sister's voice faltered. The antipyretic we got from the pediatrician didn't work, and his condition deteriorated rapidly. We called an ambulance in a panic, but no. I couldn't bring myself to finish the sentence. We're in the middle of a funeral right now, I continued, spreading my arms towards the crematorium. Hey, what's going on? What happened to Noah? Why are you here? A man shouted, breaking the silence. It was my husband, shock and disbelief evident in his voice. It doesn't matter why I'm here. What about Noah? I retorted sharply. Of course it matters. My husband's voice was strained, filled with urgency and concern. With nothing left to lose, I faced my husband, ready to confront the truth. I shouted back, what kind of nerve do you two have to abandon your family and go on a fair trip? Noah was sick with a fever, and despite my plea for help, you ignored us and went on your trip. Are you out of your mind? What are you saying? I've known for a long time. When I contacted your company, they said you had taken paid leave. When I checked the computer, there was a reservation for a trip to Hawaii, staying on the same flight and in the same hotel as my sister. You think you can explain that away as a coincidence? At my intense accusation, my husband was left speechless. Olivia, tell me, is Noah? His voice broke. How can you ask that question now? Why do you think we're here? Why do you think we're wearing mourning clothes at the crematorium? Don't you understand? I demanded, my voice trembling with emotion. No. My sister's scream pierced the tense air, collapsing into tears. I looked down at her with cold eyes. You have no right to cry, Emma. You're the worst kind of person, abandoning your son to go on a trip with your sister's husband. I was so lonely all by myself. That's why. Emma's voice quivered. So you laid hands on my husband? I accused. What? I did nothing wrong. I'm not in the wrong, Emma insisted, unbelievably lashing out in anger. I didn't choose to have a child, nor did I choose to become a single mother. When my ex-husband and I divorced, I wanted him to take custody of Noah, but he refused, so I did my best to raise him on my own. But to think Noah would? No, Emma. The one comforting my crying sister was my husband. It seemed he had no intention of hiding their affair any longer. Don't be selfish. Our parents and I have helped as much as we can. Leaving the sick child alone to have an affair is no excuse. I lashed out at them. You don't even realize how despicable you are. You're the worst. Hey, Olivia, aren't you being too harsh on your sister? Emma is shocked because Noah has passed away, my husband interjected. Shut up. Don't you dare act superior. Just so you know, we're getting a divorce. I'll make you pay for everything you owe, so be prepared. What? What does that have to do with this? It has everything to do with this. I yelled back at him, my sister crying in the background. The situation had become a battlefield. Our parents approached us in the midst of the chaos. My sister, tear-streaked, blamed them. Dad, Mom, why didn't you take proper care of Noah? Why did you let this happen? She cried out. Suddenly, a dry slapping sound echoed through the tension. It was our father who had slapped my sister's cheek. Don't be ridiculous. You abandoned your child and yet you blame others. You even went on a trip with your sister's husband. Shameless. I feel ashamed as a father for raising you like this, he condemned her. My sister cried even harder at our father's harsh words. I contemplated slapping my husband, but before I could act, a small boy's voice cut through the turmoil. Mom. My sister turned sharply. There he was. No. Noah, she exclaimed, moving towards him, but the man holding Noah quickly stepped back, out of her reach. Hey, what are you doing, Lucas? I demanded. The man holding Noah was my sister's ex-husband, the man who had divorced her due to their personal conflicts. That's what I should be saying. What are you doing, leaving Noah alone? It's none of your business. Noah is my son too, he argued fiercely. I followed the prevailing opinion that a mother is better because you insisted on not sharing custody, no matter how many times. I warned you, you wouldn't let me see him, and as I feared, it came to this. You have no right to be Noah's mother. Shut up. All you have to do is quietly pay child support. I'll pay whatever it takes for Noah's sake, but you didn't take care of him. You left him alone. You didn't even know how dangerous his condition was, and you were off on a pleasure trip. On that day when Noah's condition suddenly deteriorated, I panicked and called an ambulance. I called my parents and Lucas, Noah's father. While treatment was being given after arriving at the hospital, he was quite surprised when I told him my sister was on a pleasure trip with my husband. Afterwards, Noah, who was discharged from the hospital in good health, was recuperating at Lucas's parents' house. Wait, so Noah is safe, right? I asked my bewildered husband, staring at the crematorium. It's her grandmother, I explained. Our grandmother, who was bedridden due to her advanced age, has been under care at a nursing home. She passed away from old age the other day. Even though she was bedridden, she had a clear mind and doted on her great-grandchildren, Ava and Noah. When we occasionally visited her at the facility, her wrinkled face would crinkle even more. At the sudden farewell, I and my parents and Ava were unable to cope and just wept. Noah, being just out of illness, didn't attend the funeral. But I called my sister to this crematorium after informing Lucas that Noah was fine since his fever had completely gone down. You tricked me, my sister accused, staring daggers at us. We were the ones who wanted to accuse her. I didn't hear that Grandma had passed away either, my sister shouted. I called multiple times to tell you that Grandma had passed away, but your phone was turned off. Both of you were unreachable. Even though Grandma was kind to you, it's unacceptable to be late enough. Key, it's mocking me. No, let's go. You'd rather be with Mommy than this man, right, Lucas? I said firmly, trying to take no back from Lucas. It was father scolding my sister who was confronting Lucas. Are you still thinking that you can keep no with you even after all this? Listen, what you did was on the verge of breaking the law. It's called parental neglect. You failed as a mother. Don't think that you can ever be by Noah's side again. Noah will be raised by Lucas. Dad, no way. We have even hired a lawyer and decided to fully cooperate with Lucas. You are no longer our daughter. Be prepared for us to cut ties, Mom. My sister's face turned pale at the disavowal from her parents. I stood imposingly in front of my sister and husband. My husband and I are getting a divorce. Why don't you two get along? You should be fine not seeing each of your children. After all, you left them behind to go on a trip overseas. Hearing this, my husband started yelling. Wait, Olivia. It was just a moment of weakness, just a fling with Emma. What's most important to me are you and Ava. Then my sister exploded. What did you say? A fling. You said you don't love Olivia anymore, that you only love me. Shut up. I love my daughter. Don't mess with me. My husband and sister resumed their quarrel. We left them arguing and departed with my grandmother's ashes. After that intense dispute, mediation ended peacefully since I had appointed a lawyer. Noah went to his father's place. I thought he would feel sad about being apart from his mother, but he was actually happy. It seemed my sister was completely non-functional as a mother. My husband and I also had our disagreements. He was stubborn, but after being scolded by both sets of parents, he deflated. The final blow came from our daughter. I don't need daddy, Ava declared. Though only 6, she seemed to mature early and understood her father's behavior in her own way. When Ava looked at my husband like he was an insect, I couldn't help but laugh. There was no greater punishment for my ex-husband, who had adored her daughter. He now has the right to see Ava, but whether she wants to see him is up to her. So the dramatic situation came to an end. Ava and I moved back to our parents' home, living peacefully. Our parents were thrilled to have Ava around. Next year, she would start 1st grade, and we were excited about her school preparation. I also planned to get a job at the same time she started school. Noah visited every now and then with Lucas. His face was unrecognizably bright compared to before, filled with smiles. Meanwhile, while we were living joyfully, it seemed my sister and ex-husband ended their relationship easily. Perhaps it truly was just a fling for my ex-husband. Perhaps he was shocked at being disliked by his daughter, so he easily discarded my sister. However, his affair with his wife's sister became known in his company, and he was deemed to have character problems. He was sent to the provinces, making it even harder for him to see Ava. He deserved it. As for my sister, it seemed she lived like a hollow shell for a while, frustrated by being abandoned by everything. Eventually, she disappeared. We filed a missing persons report, but I had a feeling my